Hey Gun Geeks, I'm Destiny from FateofDestinee Media, and this is a comprehensive review of the Action Target RimFire Dueling tree. I have never burned through 22 long rifle ammo faster than when I started bringing the Action Target RimFire Dueling tree to the range. I've always had a bit of a competitive streak, so a chance to shoot against an opponent, it's always a guaranteed fun time for me. Aside from making range time more enjoyable, reactive steel like the RimFire Dueling tree has practical training benefits as well. And I'll explain some of these benefits as part of this review. In order to evaluate the RimFire Dueling tree from a more knowledgeable standpoint, I first put over 1,000 rounds of 22 long rifle into the target. And I also researched what goes into designing a quality steel target, which I'll be sharing with you in just a moment. Warning! For those of you who aren't familiar with what makes a good steel target, and because I'm a nerd, I am about to geek out on the science of target steel. If you're already an expert on the subject, or if talking metal chemistry and target physics lulls you into a deep sleep, skip ahead to the construction section to save yourself the science lesson. The science of steel. Not all steels are created equal. When evaluating steel for target shooting, there are two important qualities that make for safe, durable steel targets: hardness and surface evenness. If this is your first foray into steel reactive targets, let's first cover a couple of relevant terms: Brinell Hardness and AR500. The Brinell Hardness test, developed in the early 20th century, uses a controllable force to press a carbide ball, called an indenter, into the iron or steel being tested for a specific period of time, generally like 10 to 15 seconds. The indent created is measured across two diagonals, that of the diameter of the carbide indenter and the diameter of the indent made in the test material. The average of those diagonals and the force applied to the steel is then used to calculate the Brinell hardness number, that is, its BHN or HB value. Where F is the force applied, capital D is the diameter of the carbide ball, and lowercase d is the diameter of the indent formed, this is the formula for calculating BHN, or HB, as is shown in this diagram. According to Action Target's Informative Target Resource Guide, AR500 is a specific type of steel. It's generally recommended for severe abrasion applications that require a very high hardness, such as body armor or target steel. To be qualified as AR500, the steel must have a minimum hardness rating of 477 BHN.
This is one of the RimFire targets by Action Target. It is one of my favorites because I love dueling trees. And you can tell because this one is well loved. I've shot 22 rifles and 22 pistols at it. And these paddles, I haven't needed to grease them. I don't really anticipate a need. They swing pretty freely, as you can see. I do notice that if you hit it right in the circular part of the paddle, it swings over real nice. But if you catch it like kind of here on the arm, it may not pop all the way over. Setup isn't too bad. One of the things that I like to do is leave these two rear bolts kind of loose, and then set it down and establish the legs and then tighten it down so that I know it's going to be reasonably level. Shooting in the sand here, you can tell after shooting all day the ground has kind of loosened up, but the target itself is nice and stable. And it's just plain fun.
Hardness. The importance of this quality is pretty straightforward. If the steel isn't hard enough, shooting it is going to damage the target excessively. Steel strength is a product of the combinations of the elements in the alloys, such as carbon, nickel, and molybdenum, and in the heat treating process. Safe, ideal target steels are through hardened, which means that the hardness quality is consistent throughout the steel, as opposed to hardening only the steel's surface, which is called, you guessed it, surface hardening. Shooting steel physics. Earlier I mentioned that surface evenness is important to designing a safe steel target. Why it's important has to do with the physics involved in firing projectiles at steel. Newton's first two laws of physics determine how a bullet will behave when fired at a steel target plate. Number 1, energy is always conserved. And number 2, an object in motion stays in motion, unless acted upon by equal or greater force in the opposite direction. Bullets in flight have a great deal of energy. When that round hits the plate, the energy has to go somewhere. Some of it transfers to the plate as heat, some rings the steel with sound energy, and some of the energy is transferred by moving the plate. Because of Newton's second law, we know that a bullet in motion will stay in motion unless it meets a force traveling in the opposite direction. If our steel target plate were immobile, the bullet would retain most of its energy, just deflected in a different direction. You can imagine how dangerous that could be if that speeding bullet were to redirect or ricochet back at the shooter. This is what makes suspended or swinging targets safer than completely fixed steel targets. Transferring the projectile's kinetic energy into a moving target helps to dissipate the energy from the bullet's travel. Although swinging or moving targets help to dissipate some of that energy, not all of the energy transfers to the steel upon contact, so there will still be some risk of ricocheting rounds. To address this concern, many steel target systems also present the ballistic surface of the target at a slight downward angle to the shooter. That helps to regularly direct ricochets safely into the ground. It's important for target manufacturers to be able to reliably predict the splash pattern, that is, the deflection tendencies that spent rounds take. That way, they can ensure that spent rounds regularly redirect safely away from the shooter. The more even the surface of the target is, the more predictable the splash pattern it has. If we shot at a target plate worn with pitting or dents, the bullet would have different angles of deflection depending on the angle of the surface it struck when it hit that plate. That makes plates pitted with wear more dangerous than those with smooth, even surfaces. Safe shooting distances. Projectile deflection is also the reason why manufacturers have recommended safe distances for shooting their targets with varying calibers. Here's Action Target's recommended safe distances for their targets in general. Minimum 10 yards for handgun calibers, minimum 100 yards for shotgun slugs, and minimum 100 yards for rifle calibers. With any steel target, you should always pay attention to the specific manufacturer's safety warnings. For the RimFire Blue Dueling Trees 1/4 inch AR500 steel plates, Action Target specifically recommends a minimum distance of 10 yards, whether using rifle or handgun. Action Target's FAQ also specifically recommends only using .22 long rifle with this dueling tree. The plate motion was designed to work with .22 long rifle ammo, so while you may be able to safely shoot larger centerfire handgun rounds at the plates, they're going to wear out the steel faster and the swinging targets might not operate correctly. And while 17 HMR is technically a rimfire round, its velocities are greater than for what the target was designed, so you're safest just sticking with .22. Construction. Now that we've covered the science of steel, let's dig into the Action Target RimFire Dueling Tree itself. The RimFire Dueling Tree features 6 1/4 inch thick AR500 plates, each with a 4 inch diameter. The plate arms connect via shrouded rear-facing brackets to the rear of the target stand. The target stand and its feet aren't made of AR500, however, but of a mild steel, so try to keep your rounds to the plates to reduce damage to the stand or the feet. Because of the shrouded rear-mounted brackets, the target face is largely uniform. Completely assembled, the RimFire Dueling Tree measures 40 inches tall with a width of 14 inches. At 35 pounds, the RimFire Dueling Tree has the advantage and convenience over its heftier PT Dueling Tree brethren. Both standard and heavy-duty PT Dueling Trees weigh a substantial 110 pounds in comparison. The full-size PT trees are also more cumbersome in size. Each of them measures 5 foot tall, which is 20 inches taller than the RimFire Dueling Tree's height. Assembly. Action Target includes the full assembly instructions for their targets within the shipping box, but this target isn't too tricky to put together. You need a 9/16 inch open-end wrench. I'd also recommend a socket wrench to speed up some of the assembly. And you can find a PDF of the complete assembly instructions on Action Target's website, but I'll just summarize the directions here. You insert the carriage bolts through the front face of the target stand. Next, fit the brackets over the bolts, extending through the target stand's rear face. After that, fit the swinging plate within those bracket grooves and tighten the bolt down. That process is the same for all 6 plates. Starting with the feet on a flat surface, bolt the 2 rear feet together. Lastly, attach the stand to the assembled feet. With the target completely assembled, the stand should kind of tilt forward, and the plates should swing freely from side to side within the bracket. The tilt helps direct the projectile splash downward, but also allows gravity to assist in keeping the plates front-facing instead of getting stuck mid-swing. Initial assembly took me about half an hour. After I had the target all together, however, I haven't needed to take it completely apart again. After removing the feet, the target's just small and light enough that I can throw it into the trunk at the end of range day without much extra effort. Which brings me to range performance, function, and reliability. The RimFire Dueling tree, like its full-size PT Dueling tree counterpart, uses target plates that swing from one side of the target to the other when shot. The bracket-free face and gravity-assisted operation make for a simple, reliably functioning target system. One recommendation I have, though, is to try to keep your shots on the round target faces, as sometimes shooting the arms doesn't generate enough force to swing the plate around completely. To be able to visually identify shot placement beyond, making the plates move, the target surfaces will require regular repainting. After several hundred rounds of .22 long rifle, the only damage I've detected has been cosmetic. The occasional scratch or lead smear, which can be cleaned, on the stand that holds the plates. Application. One of the elements I enjoy most about shooting steel is the immediate feedback. Seeing one of the Dueling tree's small plates pop to the other side of the stand, accompanied by that satisfying ping, is rewarding every time. However, in addition to making the range experience more fun, these immediate visual and auditory responses also have important training benefits. Both means of feedback deliver near instant information to the shooting trainee. Instead of stopping the firing experience to clear the firearm and then examine the targets and assess hits and misses, shooters training with steel know their shot is landed within fractions of a second after firing. This kind of feedback also has a psychological benefit as well. The visual and auditory shot confirmation also serves as positive reinforcement. Each time an accurate shot lands, the shooter's rewarded with that steel's response. Even when shooting alone, a shooter can use these training benefits to improve their speed and accuracy. However, the Dueling tree has additional merits when you're training with other shooters. As I mentioned at the beginning of this review, Dueling tree targets have a way of encouraging competition. Competition increases training stress. Because multiple shooters can affect the same target, the plates develop unpredictable behavior, forcing competitors to adapt to a changing target face. Adding time and or ammunition limits to a match also adds mental pressure. When you're shooting a bullseye or even a simple swinging plate, a few misses here and there don't mean much beyond making you reload more often. But when you're pitted against another shooter of equal or greater skill, 1 or 2 missed shots could mean the difference between winning or losing. Competing against an opponent in real time, even someone as amiable as my little sister, has a way of making me operate my .22 with a little more purpose and a sense of urgency. I begin to more effectively evaluate the tactics of my shots, timing my reloads and focusing to achieve more accurate shots faster in my attempt to flip a few more plates to her side of the stand before she sends them back. I noticed my largest and quickest developments in marksmanship skill after a few matches against my dad or one of my siblings. As a regular shooter, part of the Dueling tree's appeal to me is in its practicality. I hit the range usually about twice a week. I burn through a good amount of ammo in a year. As a regular shooter, part of the Dueling tree's appeal to me is in its practicality. I hit the range usually twice a week. I burn through a good lot of ammo in a year and a ton of paper. Because the RimFire Dueling tree is lighter and has a smaller footprint than its centerfire counterparts, it's convenient for me to throw it into the trunk, have a blast at the range, and then pop it right back into the car. It's low maintenance and it's durable enough to last thousands of rounds.
It's not too heavy. I don't know, just by feel, I'd say it feels around 20, maybe a little bit less. So it's pretty wieldy. As far as transport goes, I prefer taking the feet off when I pop it into my vehicle. And so then I have the tree part separate from the feet, and that seems to work well for me for transport. Otherwise, pretty convenient.
Price. One of the hurdles in making the transition to reactive steel targets from paper or cardboard targets or the like is the sticker shock. Action targets aren't an exclusion from the higher price trend of quality steel targets. While the $199 RimFire Dueling tree shaves $250 off the list price of the standard PT Dueling tree's $449 price point, and it shaves $350 off the AR-550 plated heavy-duty PT Dueling tree's $549 MSRP. It's just not even comparable to the disposable target alternatives. When you consider the Action Target RimFire Dueling tree, you'll have to determine the price you're willing to pay for immediate feedback training and not having to replace consumable targets. If you want the quality, reliability, and durability of a steel target, the Action Target RimFire Dueling tree is competitively priced.
like that it's real reactive right away. It shows when you hit it or not. It's nice for, just knowing if you hit it. I sometimes worry about that when I'm hitting paper targets, because sometimes if it's, depending on how far away it is, I'll go, did I hit it? No? Yeah? I think it's there, it's close. But you know right away with the reactive targets because they'll move. If you miss, it won't move. I like it.
Final thoughts. I was impressed with the fit, finish, and lack of welding required for the action target RimFire Dueling tree. I wish it didn't have exposed bolts on the face of the target stand, but it is a .22 long rifle target after all, so it's not as big of a concern as it would be for higher caliber ammo. What keeps me bringing it to the range is that it's fun, and it works just the way that it's supposed to every time. The target plates swing reliably and ring rewardingly with every shot that hits home. If you're looking for a moderate investment that allows you to enjoy the fun and training benefits of steel targets without the added cost of larger caliber systems, Action Target's RimFire Dueling tree offers a low-maintenance, reactive steel experience that you and your family can enjoy for years. Just be sure to bring enough .22.